Being competitive in the business world is a lot
Hello there.
different today.
Darren,
In fact,
meet again.
it's different every day.
Yeah. Do you hear the intro?
Can you keep up with the change?
Can. Sorry about that.
Help. This is the PowerApps Academy Podcast. We'll talk about anything and everything Microsoft Power Apps. Finally, you can reach capabilities that were once only reserved for high-end development tools. And with our help, you'll quickly become a pro. Let's do it. Welcome to the PowerApps Academy Podcast. And now your hosts, Barry Abramson and Darren Neese.
Wow, what'd you think of that?
Wow, that's great. Thanks for putting that together, Darren. What did you think of that?
I thought it was pretty. It almost sounded like a radio show.
It did. Professional. My God, how did you do that? I'll take it that's not your voice. I know Darren went away and arranged that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I sought out a guy out on Fiverr that does intros and so through that, and so we're just sort of testing this out. We'd like to hear what you guys think. If you guys think that's a nice addition or if it's a distraction, if that's something you'd want to hear. That was probably about 20-30 seconds. So whatever intro we go with, we don't want it to be too long, right? Because you guys are gonna be listening to that every single time. And we also have an outro that we'll try out. We'll put that at the end. But yeah,
Cool.
so
Thanks for
welcome
arranging
back.
that. That sounds pretty cool. It's
Yeah.
definitely better than my voice.
Yeah, mine too. Absolutely. So you got
Right.
anything fun coming up in the next week?
I'm actually going camping of all things in a place called Wales. So I've spent today packing, and it's been a long day packing. So excuse me if I'm not entirely with it today, but yeah, it's got everything ready to go, and it's up at about 5 a.m. tomorrow morning for a week in Wales in what's expected to be, quite a lot of rain as well. So you can just imagine how that's going to be. But yeah, it's a really pretty part of the country. You should look it up. It's a place called St David's in Wales, which is on the west side of the United Kingdom. Very pretty place. It actually feels like you're in a different country when you're in Wales. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's good. It's going to be nice.
Sounds great.
Other
Sounds
than
like
being a bit wet.
sounds like a great time, alone time with the family, and get
Yeah.
some quality time in. So we typically do these podcasts on Wednesdays, but we thought since you're going to be out this week, hey, why not do one this weekend and get it in early, right?
Yeah, for sure. Keep the momentum up.
Yeah.
Right. So what did we cover off last week?
So last
Maybe
week,
just refresh.
yeah. So this last Wednesday, we wanted to make sure we start at the very beginning for the absolute beginners. I know a lot of my stuff is a little more on the intermediate, advanced side, and I wanted to slow things down. And you had talked about creating some material, and you've got this academy, and why not start off with the basics and go through and make sure nobody's lost. If you're just getting in on Power Apps, this is the perfect place for you to start. Because last week we talked about setting up an environment if you don't have one. We talked about the environment of Power Apps. So if I'll bring up the screen here. So we went around the environment here, the console, and what we did was we added a gallery, we added a form, we added some simple buttons, and we learned how to sort of tie it all together. And for me, in my mind, that's the hardcore basics of Power Apps. If you can do that, boom, you're writing applications.
Yeah, and there was some really interesting information in there, especially for you guys who've just started out on your Power Apps journey. Go back and watch that if you haven't watched it, because it's going to it's going to fill in a lot of gaps. Because when you start off, there's always like, oh my God, what is this? How does this work? And I think we covered off some really important topics there, and also just pulled it all together. So it'll give you a boost, a head start when you start building your app. So go back and watch that, and hopefully we're going to continue the explanation of the basics in today's video.
Absolutely. And we'll have links down below for the whole playlist of all this, and also the audio only version of the podcast that will be down in the description. So I'm going to go to the comments here and see what people are saying here. Data is King says, nice intro, guys. Okay. So we got one thumbs up. Okay.
And,
And we got,
if you guys have any feedback on that intro, I mean, is it too long, too short? Do you like the music? What kind of vibe do you think we
is
should
it too
bring with that
loud?
intro?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
too loud.
it
It's never too
metal?
loud. You rock on, man.
We got to make sure everybody's awake, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then Laura back says, hello, Laura.
Hello.
Yeah, and then we also have Brian. Evening. Hope you're both doing well. Well, thank you, Brian. Hope you're doing well as well. And
Actually, I know behind a quick shout out behind Laura. I know there's Caleb and Leo behind there tuning in. So big shout out to you guys.
Very cool. Yeah, looks like she's got the whole family there.
Yeah, all dialed in for an evening of PowerApps. Nothing better, right? PowerApps and wine.
Why not? What do you think about getting our kids? I mean, we're both family guys. We're what do you think about getting your children into PowerApps?
Well, I've been really seriously thinking about it because it's a great way and it's a fun way to learn, and it's not difficult, right? So you can program Roblox and you can do a few other applications, but this is fun, and I can and maybe I need to think about some kids games that you could actually create with PowerApps. Maybe that's something I'll start thinking about and get them involved. But it's a good skill to learn as a kid, and stop developing on the stuff, because it's like I see this low code movement as I did because I come from a IT infrastructure background. And I still remember when cloud came up and everyone's like, no, we're never going to move everything to cloud. It's still going to be in our data centers, and there was that resistance. And there's something similar here on the development side, right? It's not going to obviously overtake development, because you still need people developing the nuts and bolts of these kind of things. But certainly within businesses, there is high demand for development teams, and they can never there's always a backlog, right? And people don't get their requirement or request action because all the developers are too busy. There's never enough developers. And this now allows other people in the business to start developing for themselves as in citizen developers, or getting doing the automation and development pieces themselves without having to rely on them. So I think that's going to drive the movement, and and people are going to go, well, why do we have to focus on developing the nuts and bolts when it's already done? Obviously, there's security and all this sort of stuff you have to think about, but when you can just, it's time to market, and if you can get something to market quicker by using one of these platforms, then why not?
Absolutely. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but here in the United States, in the IT realm, it's actually one of the fields, being a software developer, is you don't necessarily need to have a degree in computer science to do this stuff, or degree. Pretty much you need to have the skills and the experience to get the jobs. And almost all those other professions, the medical field, or I mean, I can list off all kinds of different fields that they expect a 4-year degree. So if, let's say, you've got a teenager that really doesn't care too much for school, they're not really looking forward, maybe they're not planning on going into college, but if you could teach them some IT skills, that could really set them up for success. So give them a lot more options as they enter the work world.
No, certainly. So I'm going to be getting my kids on there. I can see Leo, who's my youngest one. He's tuning in because he's interested, right? Just because they listen to us on the podcast, and it's creating the interest in them around, what is this PowerApp stuff that you guys are talking about? And then maybe just a little spark like that's enough to get them interested and maybe get them involved. And then, as you said, it might be actually why spend thousands of dollars or pounds going to university when you can just get straight on it and start making money.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go back to the comments here, and then let's see here. Laura says sure, and maybe that has I don't remember what we said right before she said sure, but we have Victor. I did one aeroplane and PowerApps with Victor Jr. and imagine going back and forth. It was fun. So Victor perhaps did a game with a plane inside of it, perhaps. Victor, is that what you're talking about? Or
yeah, it'd be great to hear if anyone's actually developed any games in PowerApps. It'd be interested.
I've seen a few out there. Yeah, and they seem pretty cool. Seem pretty interesting.
Hmm.
And then Laura says, "Hello, can I have a
Yeah,
shout out?" It's also
that's
Leo.
Leo.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's my youngest who's dialed in tonight.
Okay, very
Hey,
cool.
Leo. Excellent.
Awesome. All right, so tonight we are gonna do some filtering and some searching. So, looking at our application, perhaps we should do a refresher and just look at our data source. And so I'm going to click on the data source here, and there's our EP2 contact, and I'm going to go in and edit the data here. And now I don't want to leave this, so I'm going to hit the save. Typically, that opens that up in a new tab. I'm a little surprised that it's going to try to use the same tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up SharePoint here, and Data's King says, "Cool, I create a roulette table in Power Apps." Okay, cool.
Wow.
Yeah, so guys, Data's King has his own YouTube channel, and I saw some type of roulette game that he had in there. So yeah, you could check
Can
that
you
out.
post the link to that? That'll be well, if it's
Yeah,
available, your
yeah,
video on that one. That'll be good to
Data's
see.
King. If you have that link, go ahead and paste it there. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So I'm going to bring open, okay. So we do have SharePoint here, and I'm going to click on the PowerApps Podcast. I'm going to go into site settings, and let's go take a look at the data that we currently have. And this is pretty much just a contacts list. So let's add in here perhaps a column, a string, and let's add in a single line of text. And so let's add in here perhaps country. Do that single line of text. We'll hit save. Okay, so that's in there. And then also we're going to be searching. So we could do a search on title, or we can do a search on
Oh,
country
sorry,
as
just
well.
remind me where we are, Darren. It's been a long
Sure.
day. So we've had our Power App, we've got our gallery and our form there.
Right.
We've got our connection back to our SharePoint list, which has all the fields that are already described there in the gallery and the form. And now
Hmm.
we add in another column to our SharePoint list in SharePoint,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the purpose of.
Yeah. So if we are going to have some type of filtering, well, imagine a lot of times screens, you'll want some type of a drop down list at the top. So you want to filter this down. Let's say, here in the United States, we might have a listing of customers, and then
Mhm.
we'll have a drop down list of all 50 states, and we'll pick, a state, and then we'll only display,
Right.
uh, contacts from that particular one that is picked at the top.
Yeah,
So in
yeah,
this
for
case, I
sure.
was imagining we could add a field here called country, and as we add contacts, perhaps people could tell us what country they're listing from, and we'll sort of add them here, and they don't have to give out any information they don't want shared on air here, but we
Yeah.
could have a little bit of data and sort of see how that would work by filtering based on a drop down list. What do you think of
Cool.
that?
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Okay, very good.
And where would that be? Would that filter be like something they can choose, or would it just be embedded in to whatever? It'll always filter by country, or
Yeah, so I'm imagining that, yeah, it would be a drop down that the user could select, and it would
Mhm.
be totally dynamic. In fact, as we enter more and more countries, we can do a distinct and actually show a distinct of all the different countries that are in that table. So I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of people. Yeah.
Distinct, guys. I think, can correct me if I'm wrong. Distinct, if there's like, if you've got two, two United Kingdoms and three rows that have USA, it just only displays one of it once, right? So it's only,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely. So that's only good. Yeah. So it's only going to display, let's say USA once and UK
Mhm.
once, even though we might have hundreds of people with USA, or hundreds that's
Yeah.
the UK or Germany or some other country. It's only going to display one of each.
Mhm.
So it sort of works really well for a drop down list. So perhaps we'll touch on that as well tonight if we get through everything. Okay. So what we've done so far is we've gone in and we've added a new field over here in SharePoint, just added a little text field for country. Now, right now, our two records are blank. It doesn't have any value in there right now. So over here in Power Apps, even if we add any fields, we drop fields, we rename fields, PowerApps doesn't automatically know that that's changed over there. So what we need to do is actually tell PowerApps to refresh its knowledge of those lists, the structure. So if we click on these little three dots here and click on refresh, it's going to go and refresh its schema information or its metadata of that list.
Is there a way we could create a button that we could click to refresh it, or is it something that we always need to click on?
Absolutely. So we could. So there's two different types of refreshes. One refresh. So let me just add over a button to accomplish what you're just asking about. We could bring over a button here, and I could double click on this button, and I could type in refresh. We could do that, and click off of it, and then click back on. And there's a shortcut to get to the on start. Well, as you can see, on start's already selected. If it's not, there's a little shortcut. If you click on action and then click on select, it sort of gets you there faster if it's not already selected. So, but in here, you could use a function called refresh. Okay. And we have our opening and closing parentheses. And then inside the refresh, what we needed to give it is the data source that we want to refresh. So EP2 contact. Okay. And what that's going to do is, let's say, Barry, I've published this app, I've shared it with you, and you're in there going crazy, just entering all kinds of records. And I run and I've only got 2 records. How is it, or when is it that I will see the new records that you're entering? Let's say you're entering a record every 30 seconds. How long before I start seeing your records?
After you refresh it, right?
Well, after you refresh it, typically what's going to happen if we don't have anything like a refresh, you're not going to see it until more than likely you close down the app or you reopen it and say, oh, wow, look at all these records here.
Because that's actually a question I had in my mind was, I actually thought the refresh was for adding new columns and for that to be displayed back. I wasn't 100% sure about the actual data.
There's actually 2 types of refreshes. Okay. So there is if I say schema, do you think everybody would know what I mean by schema? Do you know what I mean when I say schema?
Yeah. I mean, it's the structure of a data repository. So how the tables are built. Yeah.
And staying like at a basic level, I don't want to ever assume that everybody is from a database background like I am. And so people like you and me are in the IT world. We know what schema means where it comes to databases, and SharePoint lists really people aren't used to perhaps thinking of those as database tables, but we're using those as database tables. And so if you add or remove columns, so all the columns within a database table or a SharePoint list, a lot of times it's called a schema or the database design. Okay. So there's 2 types of refreshes. One is you're refreshing the design or the schema. So PowerApps didn't know that I added a new field. Okay. And calling a refresh over here inside the app would not refresh the schema information. It would just refresh. Right. It would go back to it and get new data, but it's not going to know about the schema change. When you go over here to the data source and you hit refresh, it does both types of refreshes. It's going to refresh the schema, and it's going to go get a refresh of the data. Where inside your code, if you hit the refresh, it's only going to go get the new data.
Right. So maybe, this is a little bit too advanced, but does it actually bring all the fields into the app on load? Is that why it has to refresh? I take it as not going back and reading the SharePoint list as and when you need it to.
So when the application loads and this application knows that I'm referencing this data source, it's going to go get. Let's go look and see what we have here. 500. It's going to go and get up to 500. And I say up to because we only have 2 records. So really, it's only going to get 2 records. Yeah. But if I had 1,000 records, it's going to go get the 500 records. So it's got 500 records to work with. And you can actually, what I did, I just want to explain what I did here because I did it a little quickly. I went up here to settings for the application. That's right there. Okay. And I scroll down a little bit and look, data row limit. Set how many rows are retrieved from server-based connections where delegation is not supported. So it's going to go get 500. Now you can increase this up to 2,000 if you want to. But
Is that the max 2,000?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will freak out when they first hear that. It's like, what? I can only work with 2,000 rows. Well, it's a little more, it's not that bad, because if you think about it, do you ever really need to put 2,000 records on a screen at once? I don't even know if you could fit 2,000 records on a screen at once. Maybe if it was a number and you had 10 columns within a gallery and you had a scroll bar, but really there's no reason to display 2,000 records. What's the intended purpose of Power Apps? It's a UI for people to view some data. I mean, if it's all a pure report, you want to, print off hundreds of pages of data. Well, you got Power BI for that, right?
Yeah. But is it actually going to impact your app? Let's say I've got 3,000 rows in my my SharePoint list, and all I want to do is, write another row to it. Is it going to have an issue because it's now over 2,000, even though I'm just writing to it, or is it only when you try and read from that?
So SharePoint doesn't have that limitation. So you can keep on adding rows. Okay. If you just go and try to get all the data without using a filter. Now we're going to be talking about filter tonight. If you don't use a filter, it's just going to go get up to 2,000 records. Now, so let's add that 2,000. A lot of times people go in here and set that automatically 2,000. So at least we got 2,000 now. It will get up to 2,000, and that's the max. Now, what I encourage everybody to do is never just reference the data source like that. You always need to have a filter in there of some sort. And also so we're going to filter this based on the country, but think about this. Do you need to see if you have a business and you've got tons and tons of contacts? Let's say your SharePoint site has 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 contacts in it. Maybe you only need to see the contacts or your customers that have done business with you in the last year. Well, that could be maybe just 1,500. You know what I mean? So there's always this idea of if you can delegate the query to the data source, you're most of the time you're going to be fine. And if you structure your queries right, that 2,000 record limit is not going to be an issue. It scares a lot of people away from this platform, Power Apps, a lot when they hear about that limitation.
Yeah.
So
I think it may be something we can pick up later, because I know I've certainly come into some messages around delegation and understanding exactly what that is. We won't cover it in this one, but certainly as we progress a little bit later, understanding exactly what delegation is, how to get around it and what it actually means for your app.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And something that will happen if you have some delegation, the Power Apps will tell you, hey, this is a warning. Power Apps will become concerned about the delegation, and perhaps we'll talk more about that as those warnings come up. Okay. So, all right. So going back here, just looking over the comments here. Data's King says, if I need to change the columns in SharePoint, I'll remove the connection and then reconnect it back. Okay. Well, that's not a bad thing either. The refresh might save you a little bit of time, but, removing it and adding it is fine as well. Okay. So we've got a new field. So what I did was I did a refresh here. At least I think I did. Let me do it just one more time just to make sure it's in there. And it doesn't take long. Over here in the form, now we're not displaying a lot of fields over here. Maybe we'll display one or two more eventually. But over here in the form, we need a place to enter that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this Edit Fields over in the upper right corner. And I'm going to click on Add Field. And I'm going to go find it. And it's right there, country.
So you've highlighted the form part of that screen, right? Just so and now you want to add a field into that form. That's the field that you added to the SharePoint column earlier in terms of the column. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
absolutely.
Country. Cool.
So there's the country, and I'm just going to add it.
And does it have to be in that form? Could you have that field outside of the form, like just maybe next to the refresh button, for instance, or does it always put is the advice always put it with the form, or is the limitation?
So here, at the level that we're at, we're using a form. It makes sense to add that field in the form. However, to answer your question, you could put something out here on the side called country. It doesn't have to be inside the form, But if you do, and it's not inside the form, if you want that field to be updated, okay, so let's say we had this form here and we put a country down here. You would need to utilize a patch function, which we'll eventually cover. But right here at the basics, we're going to probably just stick with the form for now. So at this case, at this level, it probably makes sense to keep it right there.
Yeah.
But
keep it simple. Keep it simple. Put it in the form.
Yeah. But that's good that you bring these questions up, because I know there's got to be some people, if you're learning this system for new, you got all these questions, popping off in your head, and you might like, you might want those answers. So I'm looking back at the comments here. Brian, what happens if it's more than 2000? Does it show nothing, or does it show random values up to 2000? So it's going to give you, well, first of all, a gallery will only display it displays 100 rows out of that 2000. I mean, it's got the data, but it's only going to display 100 rows. And what you'll notice is you'll use that little your scroll bar to go down, and once it hits that 101st record, it's going to take a moment, and then it will display the next 100. There's a little bit of an exception there, which is if you make the gallery really wide, and if you click on the gallery and you reset this little property over here called wrap count and make it 2 or 3 columns, or I think you can have up to 10 columns within a gallery. So if you can physically see more than 100, it will go ahead and get the next 100. Okay. So just giving you a little bit of an idea of how the gallery works. It can have that 2000, but it's only going to show that 2000, and that's it. So it's not going to show, it's going to show nothing after that 2000. So if any of you are familiar with SQL or structured query language, there's actually something you can type in your select statement within SQL, and it's called top. And you could say top 100, you could say top 1, give me the top 1 record for this query. Or you could say, so in this case, what happens is, PowerApps will say, give me the top 2000 records. And that's the only thing that data source will do. And you try to hit refresh, it's just going to go get that same 2000 records again. So that's why it's important to actually utilize this filter function that we're going to learn here. So hopefully that answers the question, Brian. Thanks for the question. All right. So we have country here. Let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to click on Darren, and I'm going to say USA. I'm going to hit save. And, just to make sure this data is being pulled over correctly, I'm going to sort of reposition these labels a little bit. So there's that. And then on the second label here, I'll say country. Okay, so there's the country. Okay, very good. And for the UK, do you typically say UK? Do you say
UK? Yeah, that's it.
That's good. All right. Okay. I think that we should probably create some fictional records here. Let's click on new, and let's create John Doe. John Doe has a phone number of 555-555-1234. Email is john@doe.name. Birth date, well, he was born last night.
Clever guy.
What country would you like John Doe to live in?
Can we add a new country? We can't. Sure. We're limited now, right? Just to the countries that we already have in there right now.
We're not limited at all. This is a single line of text. We could type in whatever. We can make up fictional countries if you want.
Okay, right. Okay, so it's pulling down the drop down from
this little drop down. This little drop down here.
Yeah.
This little drop down here we should ignore, because this is the browser getting in my way. It's trying to help. It's trying to help me out, but I don't. I don't want it to help me out, and it keeps popping up there. It's Edge. I'm using Microsoft Edge here. So,
okay, just a point, guys. That isn't a part of PowerApps. Intelli, whatever it's called. Yeah. So that's okay. Right, so cool. I'm
gonna go Germany. Now?
Germany. Let's go for Germany.
I don't know if John Doe is a German name though, but I'll hit save. Let's create a new record, and why don't you give me a name, Barry?
Peter Pan. I'm sure you know Peter Pan is.
And all right, so let's go with 999 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Zmail Peter. Where is Peter from? Neverland? Disney?
Oh my God, the Netherlands.
Neverland.
Neverland.
Neverland.net.
Yeah.
I don't
Isn't that
know
where Michael Jackson's from? Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I think he named his house Neverland, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Where should Peter Pan, what country should he be from?
Let's go the Netherlands. Netherlands.
I love it. All right.
Why not?
Okay, so now we have a few countries in here, okay? So now what I want to do here is I want a little drop down. So if we have tons and tons of records, at that point it starts to make sense. When I say tons and tons, maybe dozens. Okay, I'm going to insert over a drop down list. Okay, so here's a drop down list. Okay, and I'm going to align it the left side with the gallery, and the upper. I'm going to align it with that button here. In fact, I can move this over a little bit. Okay. And what I like to do is start naming our controls to have more meaningful names. So it's a Microsoft best practice to name our drop downs. I always got in the habit with ASP.NET. They would say DDL for drop down list, but according to the Microsoft standards for Power Apps, it should be DRP, I believe.
Yeah.
DRP and
lowercase as well.
Yeah, all lowercase for that 3-letter prefix. So
just a quick one. While you're talking about naming these controls, so I do like DRP underscore. Everyone will have their own way, but to be honest, I don't rename everything. I only rename the things that I either call or that I modify in some way. Like the rest of it, I just leave. Otherwise, it just becomes too time consuming to have to.
Yes.
I know it's people would consider that bad practice, right? I don't know. How do you approach renaming these things? These controls, Darren?
I try to stick with the Microsoft standard, but yeah, I don't name every single label or shape I bring over. Now, if I reference that in expression or code, I think it is a good idea to name.
Yeah, I definitely do it for anything that I reference, and that's probably most people probably do that. But it would literally take you hours and if not days of extra time if you're going to start renaming labels and all sorts of stuff that you never really reference. There's no real point in it.
So as we've been talking, so I went around. So a button, I'm going to prefix that with BTN, and this is a refresh button. So I called it BTN refresh. For a gallery, you want to prefix that with GAL, which is short for gallery. Over here for the form, I prefix that with FRM. Okay. And then so for these buttons, I'm going to have BTN. So BTN for a save button, I'll say save. And just a word of caution as you name your controls. It has the same context as all the other screens in the app. So if you name this button here, right, BTN new, I cannot have another button. I cannot have any control called BTN new throughout the whole application. Just sort of a little bit of a word of caution. So you might have a save button on every single screen. So you might have to get a little creative on what you call your save buttons. So this is screen one. Maybe we should probably name that something better. But so a lot of times what people do is they'll put some type of abbreviation or indication of what screen it's on to make all the save buttons sort of unique in the application, so there's no conflicts.
And there's actually the nice thing about PowerApps is that if you wanted to rename a button, and let's say you had referenced that button all over your app, and you're going, oh my god, I can't rename it now because I've already used it in multiple queries and scripts or whatever. But you can actually rename it, and it renames it across the app for you. So you don't have to worry about renaming it later. You can always do it very easily and without it impacting your app, no matter where you've used that button.
I love the feature about PowerApps that if this was called button one and I finally renamed it, and I had that button one and code all over the place, and I rename it at the button, it changes it everywhere else. That is
everywhere.
Great.
That's amazing. Yeah,
that's something that I don't enjoy in other programming languages. So
having to go do that manually. Oh god.
Yeah, you got to do it manually all over the place. So It's actually something really cool
And
about.
if you actually try to call a button the same as another button, it would just error. Or I've never actually tried it before.
You know what? Let's try it out so we can see exactly what happens. So I'm going to bring one over here, and I'm going to call this BTN save enter. Can't rename. This name is already being used. So it's not like a catastrophic error, system error where it's going to crash everything, but it's going to let you know, and it's going to keep the button. It's going to rename it back to what it was before.
And every time you copy a button, it'll keep the same name and just put an _1 at the end or something, _2. So
absolutely. So if I were to click on that save button, copy paste, there we go. So it's button save _1. Absolutely. All right. So for this little drop down here, so when you bring over a brand new drop down, it's going to use this drop down sample, which is a built-in array within PowerApps. So it just says 1, 2, 3. So it has some values in here when you bring over a new one. So what I want to do is I want to bring over, let's go call this, it's called EP2 contact. And there's different ways we can do this. I can say, okay, there's the data source. Let me use .country. I've seen this used. Okay. So this is giving me a single column array or single column table. Okay. And so if I run this, I've got USA, UK, Germany, Netherlands. Okay. So that on the surface, it looks like it gives us exactly what we want. Okay. But what happens when I'm running this? I click on new and I add in a Mary Smith, and I don't enter her phone, email, because maybe you may not have all the information for Mary Smith, but I do know her country and it's USA. And I'm going to click save. What's going to happen here? So it entered her here. Okay, very good. But over here in this drop down, oh, look at this. I got 2 USAs. So that starts to become problematic, and we need to find a way to get around that. Now,
this is the distinct we were talking about earlier, isn't it?
Absolutely. So,
Darren, just quickly, so just to recap on that for those who might have got lost on that, if we just go back and just revisit that drop-down box again,
sure.
From a close that just from a studio perspective, just where you actually write where you referenced the SharePoint list. Yeah. So you typed in there. So the items of that drop-down box are EP2 _ contact, which is the SharePoint list, dot country. Now you could you could have selected any of the columns of the SharePoint list, right? But you selected country, just so everyone's aware that it's the SharePoint list and then the specific column that you want. So you SharePoint list dot the column that you want, and then that will display it. So you could have displayed the name of everyone in the SharePoint list instead of the country.
Absolutely. So if I were to go in here instead of country, if I said title, hit tab, so now we'll see people's names in here. But I'm glad that you asked me that and sort of slowed me down there, because there's actually a way that I think is used more commonly. And in fact, I don't usually do it this way. I usually just leave it with the data source there. And then I go over to the value. Do you see over here on the right side? I'm hovering over the word value. And so it says title there.
You can choose.
What value? Well, we could go find country. And now it looks at the different column for that. So now it's bringing in the country. So I think a lot of times that is how the drop-down list is used. So it's
there's lots. The thing about PowerApps is so many. There's many ways to skin a cat, as they say. So there's always lots of ways to achieve the same thing. So you could either have just plugged it in the formula bar up there, or you can use the properties. So find whatever works for you, and then some people will prefer just to type it in. Others will prefer to have a more of a GUI type, a graphical user interface type way of doing things, and then you'd use the property bar down the right-hand side.
Let me ask you a question, Barry. Over here in the forum, what do you think? So I just pulled up, I was just reading some comments over here. Data is King says, country should be a drop-down to avoid misspellings. What do you think of that? Like this field over here, do you think that should be a drop-down?
I always go for that, because not only to avoid errors, but also later on when you're trying to report, because someone might put in, for United Kingdom or even USA might put UK. Some might put in Great Britain. Some might put in United Kingdom.
Kidding.
And then when you're trying to report on it, then you have to 3 different things you're trying to report on there, or you might have to modify it later on, and that'll complicate it. So
Yeah,
always from the
absolutely.
beginning, try and use drop down. Yeah, Data is King got a really good point there. Always try and use drop downs. It's really easy
Yeah.
to put a drop down list in, as we've shown you before.
So, there's two things I would say to this. Data is King. That's absolutely true. We do want that, and I agree with you, Barry. Because you could. I mean, somebody could type in the word America, or they could type United States, and then United States of America, and then some people say USA. There's all kinds of, and also people can misspell it, and so you've got a absolute mess. Now, the one thing to keep in mind here is we're just trying to teach basics at this point. And as we move along, we'll get more sophisticated in this application and show you maybe better ways of doing it. But we don't want to try to show everything all at once, all within 1 hour. So piece by piece, we'll get better. But I do appreciate you bringing that up. And I would take that one step further. Eventually, what we might want to have is a whole SharePoint list of all the countries in the world. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I use that quite a bit. So I have like a SharePoint list for maybe currencies, one for offices, and for each app that I need the offices that we have or the currencies that we use, I just reference that table in SharePoint. So it's used by many different apps. Just a quick one on that. Are you able to put a drop-down list within a form? Because that is. Yeah, so that's going to write it back. Just so so the drop-down list that you have in the form would just be, here are the options to write back. So instead of putting a free text box so they could just type whatever, you just go in, you can only select one of these items and put it in there.
In fact, what I could do is I could copy this drop-down list, go into this data card. So within a field, within a form, you've got several controls that make up that data card for that field. I could click on the data card and just paste in, unlock that data card for the form. And I can just completely cover up that text box and have this thing right here. And now they're presented with that. And then typically what I do if I was using forms is that I would tie these two controls together. And then what you'll find inside the form is that the form needs to know, okay, what value am I going to use to actually update this? And you can actually modify that. You can say whatever is the selected text out of that drop down and not use the text box. You could do something like that.
But those, just a quick one on that. Those fields within the form, those data cards. I know I got quite confused over them. So people, I know if you're a beginner, you're going to be going, "What the hell did he just do that?" So basically, those are all predefined when you load that form in there, and you can modify them. But I think we'll keep that for a later one, because I know it took me a while to get my head around how that actually worked and what it actually meant. But for now, let's just use the defaults.
Yeah, I think for now, something that I could point out really quickly, probably in under 10 seconds, is when you have a data card, let's say for title is actually, it's required. You see that little star? Well, they've got a little label in there to show a star. And then they have a label to show the field name. Then they've got the text box. And then they've got, like, if there's an error message, well, there's a little text box that will display the error message. So it's got some things in there that it could use. It's got some functionality that it sort of makes up that data card. So that's probably what I would say about that. So, and I don't want to get too complicated all on this country thing. We could take this a lot of different ways that are sort of exciting, but I think for right now, I'm going to take this out for now. But I do want to think data is king. That absolutely is. You want to have some type of drop down for something like that. But for right now, we're just going to keep it simple. So what I want to do here is, if we run this, we'll notice we've got 2 USAs. And I don't want to have, and also I want to sort this as well. Okay. So let's do one first. Okay. So let's actually sort. Sorting is actually really simple. So we utilize a function, and the function is called sort. And whenever somebody says function, you're probably going to have 2 parentheses, an opening and a closing parenthesis. Okay. It takes 2 parameters, and inside the parentheses, the first parameter will be the data source that we're going to perform the sort on. The second parameter is the field or the column that you want to sort on. So in this case, we actually want to sort on the country. Country. Good. All right, so we did that.
Even though you're showing the country in that drop-down list from your SharePoint column, you could even sort it on name, even though you're showing the country, just to confuse it.
You actually could. Isn't that
There's
weird?
no reason why you would do that.
I don't know why you would, but yeah. So that's a good point that you brought up. Yeah. So
point, but a good point.
Yeah. Well, when you're learning stuff, it's sort of like your mind sort of goes in different ways. So it's sort of good to point out these things that your mind might wonder on and sort of clarify that,
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Oh, no. That's fine. Carry
on. So it's starting to look a little better now that we've sorted. We got those duplicates at least beside each other. So it's more recognizable. We have a duplication there. Okay. So I said duplication. Well, the opposite of duplicate is distinct, right? So what we want to do here, a lot of times when I'm working with some code here, and I'm looking at the comments here. So we've got hello from Angola, Africa. Okay.
Angola.
Wow. Okay.
Hello, Angola.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to pronounce your name. Juslenio. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Welcome, though. Great to have you on board from all the way from Africa.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm actually from South Africa, by the way, originally.
Oh, really?
I live in the UK. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Data's King says, I usually see sort by columns. Okay. So sort by columns isn't something that we'll talk about a lot tonight. For me, I see sort used most of the time, maybe 90% of the time. Sort by columns is a different function that you can use if you want to sort by more than one column, or you need to dynamically throw in the name of the column that needs to be sorted. So absolutely. So that is
sounds complicated, Darren. Sounds complicated. That
yeah. Sort by columns is a little more complicated. Eventually, we'll cover that, but not tonight. Okay, so here we go. Juclenio.
Juclenio.
Yeah.
Sounds like we got it.
Okay, so what I like to do when I work here in the coding window is there is a format text here. Okay. And I like to sort of deal with it in this more indented way. It's sort of broken out a little more. And then, so inside this sort, we're going to sort of nest our functions. Okay. So at this point, we want to use a function called distinct. Okay. And it takes two parameters as well, just like the sort. Well, the first parameter is going to be the data source, and the second is going to be the field. So it's almost
can I recommend something, Darren? Can I say let's take the sort off and let's do because we've done the sort on its own.
Sure.
To sort it. Let's do the distinct on its own, and then we put it together. Yeah, and then we can put it all together. Yeah,
an excellent idea. Yeah. Just do one thing at a time.
Yeah, because sometimes when you nest things, it can get a bit complicated, and you're going like, "Oh my god, that looks confusing." But actually, when you break it up into two different parts and then you put it together, it can make a bit more sense.
Absolutely. So here's the distinct. We have the data source, and then the field.
Just quickly, the distinct is actually a function that was used within Excel, and you might notice a lot of things that were used in Excel. If any of you have an Excel
and
background.
Also SQL, structured query language as well.
Oh right, okay. But actually, did they get it from SQL or from Excel?
Well, how far back? I think structured query language probably came before Excel, because.
So do you think Excel was built off SQL originally? Is that how it sort of evolved? SQL back in the day.
I think if we were to go one way or the other, it would just be based purely on speculation. And so as long as that's okay, I mean, I don't know. The word
doesn't really matter, does it?
Really does describe what you're trying to do. Perhaps they took it from that. I don't know.
But from what I've heard, they've sort of based a lot of the PowerApps stuff off of Excel. So if you have come from an Excel background, that
is very
help
true.
significantly. Yeah.
Yeah, that is very true. That's something that they've actually said that the languages excel like. Absolutely. All right. So I guess me as a database developer over the years, I always think SQL, especially with like queries and data sources
Yeah.
and stuff. So it's sort of cool. We have two different backgrounds. You're more from IT, uh,
Mm.
right? So you come from like a non-development and more along the lines of like service desk networking, that type of stuff.
Yeah. I come from an infrastructure back. Yeah, I've written
Okay.
some scripts and stuff, but I'm certainly not a developer. I've done a bit of
Yeah.
PowerShell scripting and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and a little bit of Excel. But I'm certainly nothing near a developer. As
Yeah.
I actually did, as we spoke about, in our initial one, I actually did do I went to a technical college where I was doing COBOL and C++, and I quickly realized that I didn't
Cool.
enjoy programming, and I
Oh,
spent a
cool.
lot of time partying and not in college.
Well, I think that makes us a good match for this podcast. We come from different areas and we'll
Yeah,
we'll look at it from different angles. Because if we were just two developers, we're like, oh yeah, I'll just SQL guys and just move on. Where
yeah,
Power Apps is attracting all kinds of different people.
yeah. I got some
From
great comments coming in there from you guys.
yeah, let's take
So
a look here. Thank you for sharing this amazing content. Well, you're welcome.
yeah.
Yeah, and it
I
looks
mean,
like
that's why we do that. Certainly, what I do, I know Darren, you'll be similar for you. Is really we enjoy helping people and getting.
Mhm.
I certainly see where this, what you can actually do with this technology. Certainly within businesses and how people within business can make a difference. And hopefully getting you guys on board quickly and helping you pass your exams and actually making a difference within your business, then that's certainly what I'm here to help you do.
yeah.
I'm sure Darren feels similar.
Absolutely. I have sort of two motivations. Number one, I do like to help people. I used to do a lot of teaching as a Microsoft certified trainer, and I miss it. I love it. And so my other motivation is to do more of it. So,
Mm.
so I've got things that I sell, courses and stuff, and perhaps you have this motivation as well, as you want to do more of this. And if I sell some of the stuff on the side, is that hopefully eventually I'll be able to do this full time. So I'd be able to create more
Yeah.
videos, you know.
Yeah.
But so he says I attend to exam PL 900. So that is the fundamentals of the Power Platform exam next week. This
Have you
knowledge.
done? Have you actually done any of your exams, Darren? Interesting
I've
question.
I've got probably like 20 different exams under my belt, none
Mhm.
of them having to do with Power Apps. That is something I did early in my career. Well, the first 10 years. So I'm a Microsoft certified database administrator under SQL Server. I'm a Microsoft certified solutions developer, Microsoft certified.
Mm.
There's so many
Yeah.
titles I have. I just sort of, whatever.
Yeah.
It's
But,
something that I think would probably be a good idea. I think it'd be fun to sort of get
yeah.
all certified because there's 4 different levels, I believe, with
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. It would be great for those who have taken the exam. Yeah, has it helped you? Are you glad that you took the exam? Is it, what they teach you in the exam, is it very different to how we using Power Apps? It'd be interesting to know. So
yeah,
do,
I did I did a video. If you do well, let me just do a search real quick. Darren Neese certification, and it was actually let's see here, 20-minute video. And what I did was I shared some of my experiences with certification and also the statistics. And there are a lot of really positive statistics about people feeling more confident on the job, getting a
mhm,
job. There's all kinds of benefits to certification. It's something that I really recommend to people.
yeah,
So yeah, eventually I would like to be a Microsoft certified architect. I think that's the top level Power Apps certification. I'm just running out of time. But
yeah. It's always, yeah. I think it's always a good idea. It's also discipline, right? Getting in there, focusing on what you need to understand, and it's going to cover the breadth of all the topics. Because sometimes if you're not doing the exam, you're pretty focused on what you're doing, and it's great to watch videos because it'll also get you thinking about some of the other functions and capabilities within the technology. But certainly when you write the exam, you get to cover a lot of that information off at the get-go.
yeah. So I'm assuming that you've done some of the exams yourself, either on the infrastructure side or.
I've done, yeah. I used to do, used to be a Microsoft certified systems engineer many
Ah,
moons back, but
that was like 8 that was like 8 exams or 7 exams, wasn't it? It
yeah, I'm actually
was a
do.
lot.
Yeah. It was hardcore. I actually did my NT4. I'm showing my age now. Like,
Oh, I remember
and
that.
then that was hardcore. That was hardcore, and back then was nothing worked. And then I think the last one I did was 2008. But then sort of exams become less important as you move. I became less technical and more into management. And then, but now I'm doing a lot of cloud type. Stuff, so around AWS and Azure and Office 365. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm sort of coming around. So I'd gone off doing the technical stuff, went very sort of managementy, and now I'm getting back into the technical side, but more at the automation side. So
Hmm.
yeah, full
Very good.
circle.
Yeah. Going back to the comments here. Love these videos. Helped me a lot. Thank you. So Gildardo? Gildardo? I always try to pronounce
Gildara.
people's
Cool.
yeah. Not the best at
Oh,
pronouncing
oh,
names.
yeah, glad to be helping you guys. So do keep and feel free to give us any feedback of if there's any topics that you guys are coming up for your exams, or that you need help with because you're working on them now and you need to understand them quicker, then do let us know, and we can cover them either now or in the next one.
Yeah. All right. So we do have excuse my broken English. Oh no, you're fine. And also Brian, hi Barry. I'm from the same background as you, from South Africa to the UK. All right.
Great,
The
excellent. Well,
electrical
hopefully
engineer.
you can see the benefits of PowerApps and it's making a difference for you as well.
Yeah.
Happy to to hear that back from some fellow
Yeah.
South African. I know he'll know about the braais and tongue masters and boerewors. Darren, I've got a lot to teach you about that.
You said fry. Did you say fries, like French fries?
Oh, braai. A braai
Fry.
is what you might call a barbecue. We call it a braai in South
Oh.
Africa. And we've got what South Africa is well known for is biltong, which you guys call beef jerky, but biltong's a lot better than beef jerky. And
Wow.
and boerewors, which is like a sausage that we make in South Africa, which is very tasty as well.
Very cool. I do have one question for you, Barry. So there is the first ever Power Platform conference in Orlando, Florida, in 1 month. Are
Mhm.
you coming?
I would love to, but but in 1 month, are you going?
I am.
Oh, you'll have to. I won't make it this time, but
Ah,
possibly next time. But we'll definitely get if you can update. That'll be fantastic.
yeah. Yeah, I'm
I
sort of
mean,
hoping to meet all my Power Apps people, people in the community and my
mm.
students, all these people I meet online, with regard to the Power Platform. I'm sort of hoping to meet as many people as I can.
Have you
So I'm a little
been
disappointed to hear that you're not
before?
coming. What's
Did
that?
did you did you go last year?
I believe it's the first. What Microsoft is claiming is it's the first ever Power Platform conference. Maybe it's the first one that Microsoft has
Right.
done, but no, I've never
Okay.
been to any other
Any
of
other
the Power
one?
Platform.
Okay. Oh, it's
Yeah,
going to be a massive one. Oh,
yeah,
we'll have to get your feedback on that, definitely.
yeah. Maybe I'll do some. I'll walk the hallways with my phone and do some live show. Hey
Yeah, that'll
guys,
be
I'm
good.
here on
Good idea.
location.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right, so let's test this distinct function that we did here. Okay, so there's the distinct. So we don't have any duplicates. Okay, but they're not sorted. So let's go back in here. We have that working. So now we'll just wrap that sort function around that. Okay. So there's the distinct. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to indent this over. Now this becomes the data source, the first parameter for the sort. Okay. And then the second parameter for sort will be the field. Now, the distinct actually changes the data source a little bit. It doesn't give us the exact same fields. It gives us a single column. And that single column, I think, is either result or value. And I think it's result.
What this has confused me, right? What's the difference between result and value? Because I always use value, I think.
Okay, well
But
let's just make sure that that's actually right. So I'm going to do that, and let's see what we have here. So it is sorted and it is working. Okay.
Mhm.
I guess what one thing I can do to sort of clarify this is if I select this distinct here, what you may not know, this is a really cool feature of Power Apps. If you select something, look at this. a data type table. Over here, you see a little downward chevron. You can actually
Yeah.
expand that. Oh, look at
Ah,
that.
right. I didn't
It's a
know that actually.
single, really? Okay.
Amazing.
It's a
Great.
single column, and that's the name of the column. And that's just what the distinct function returns. Now, you said, what's the difference between result and value? Well, if I type in value, oh bueno, it doesn't like it. So
Okay.
there are some controls that will return like a value, like a toggle or a checkbox.
Yeah.
So for some reason, certain connectors might say value for certain things.
Mm.
If I come across something that I was thinking result and it returns value, I'm sure we're going to come across it with all these videos. That we're gonna...
Could you put title in there or something like that, or is it only no?
No,
Okay.
because it takes this. Now, because I got that comment in there, it's not going to work here. Let me see if I can get this. And because there's an error in the formula, it's not going to allow me to use it. So I need to change this back to result.
Mhm.
Okay, there we go. And I'm going to go back in here and select distinct again. And you see the column name is result, and that's the only thing that you're going to get.
Okay. Well, that's dropped down that little section that you showed me there. It helps explain a lot. So that's really useful. And just a quick one. What would happen if you did the sort within the distinct? Would that work still? Or
okay, let's try that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out instead of deleting it. Okay, because we can just go back to that. All right, so your question is, if we had a distinct just like this, I'm going to copy and paste that up here. I'm going to take out that comma. All right, so what if we sorted this and we sorted it based on the country, and then we do the distinct? So what would happen?
Same.
Yeah, same result.
Good. That's useful.
Yeah. So which do you prefer? Do you want to?
I would have done the way you initially did it.
I
always do the sort on the as the sort of first.
I always like to do the sort as the outermost nest because you could have other fields at the top, check boxes, other drop downs, and you're going to be doing all kinds of really complicated things inside your filter typically. And then what I like to do at the very end, I like to just do one sort at the end. So I always like to have the sort on the outside.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to show this. So this gallery is not filtering yet. So far we've dealt with sort, we've done with distinct. And those are two things that we didn't even list the things we're going to cover tonight. But
and that was just how to display the drop down. It had nothing to do with the actual applying the filter.
Yeah. So what we should do now, we should click on this gallery and let's filter this down based on that drop down. And sometimes this is called control linking. Okay, so we're going to linking these two controls together, and I'm going to be linking the data source, the query of this thing. Okay, so look at that. So I've got this, and see it actually shows all the data here. So we want to slim that down. So I'm going to use a function called filter. Okay, and the first parameter is the data source. And a lot of these functions that deal with data, you need to pass in, you need to tell what the name of the data source is. Okay, a reference to that data source. And then for filter, it's going to be the criteria in which we're going to slim down the results. Okay, if you're an SQL database developer, this is your where clause of your select statement. Okay, so we're going to be looking at country. That is, if I can spell it right, the name of the field that we want to filter this by. When we say the word of country is whatever is up inside that that drop down list. So we call that, I think, DRP country. Whatever is selected. So that drop down list has a selected property. So I do that dot result. You see that? There's actually another way of doing this as well. We could have said drop down dot selected text dot value. Okay, so that's so those are two different ways.
So that also confuses me. So why do they give you two ways of doing it? Because there's selected test dot value, and sometimes I've had something where I've written it like this, and then later on it comes up with an error, and I've had to go back and change it to selected text dot value, and I have never really got my head around it, to be honest.
So what's being displayed in that drop-down list is a single column set of values, okay? And it's a result, and that distinct function gives us that result. If we change the order, we had it the way we had it a few seconds ago, it probably would have returned it differently. Also, you could have multiple columns. If you don't use distinct, you've got the other columns in there. So in this case, because we use that distinct, I think we're always going to have the result there. Now, selected will give you all access to all the columns in there. If we didn't use distinct, we could get at the title, we could get out all the other stuff, the ID, everything. In that case, we wouldn't use result at all. There wouldn't be a result unless we created a field name called result. Now, dot selected is going to return the record that was selected in that dropdown. Okay. Now, if you say selected text, so let me just take this out here. Selected text is not going to give us a reference to the record. It's just going to give you a string value, not a record value, a string value. And what can you do with this with a text value? Well, here we've got the result and the value. So the result for a drop-down list, you could have Alexa. Okay, so in a drop-down, you've got the text, and then let's say you've got an ID underneath it. So the ID underneath it would be the value, and the result would be what's being displayed as the text. Does that make sense?
Not really, but I'm sure I always go to value. So if you select value there, would it give you the right result? Would it give you the right answer?
Yeah. And the thing is, we only have a single column because we use distinct. We've only got a single column. So yeah, and you see it. It's already filtered by Germany. Yeah. Well, let's go back in here and change this thing to result. Okay, and it's going to give us the same thing.
So really, just whenever you're doing it, just know there's some options, and then play around with it until you get the right result. Yeah. Because I haven't pinpointed quite yet what breaks it. If you use one way versus the other. My technical depth isn't that great.
Yeah. In fact, Data's King says selected text and selected gets me every time. so we're not the only ones, huh? And then also maybe you can talk a little bit about intelligent controls on Canvas app. Now, do you know what he's talking about there? Intelligent controls? Perhaps artificial intelligence?
Sure. Possibly. Is that what the AI function?
Yeah, the AI stuff. Now, I haven't done too much with it, so we could probably dig into that. We'll probably have to have that in a later session, probably more after we cover all the basic type of fundamental type of control.
But if we haven't fully understood what you mean there, just to clarify. Yeah. You could mean something else.
Yeah, let us know if you mean artificial intelligence or you mean something else. Absolutely. All right. So we've got the filter down. Something that I like to do while I filter, in this case, we only have one at the most two people in any individual country. So we don't have a lot of records. There might be a case where people want to see all the records despite what's being displayed up here. So there's many ways of and he says, yeah, it's the AI stuff. Okay, very good. Yeah, we'll have to keep that for a different session. Barry, how do you do this? Do you put a little checkbox and say, just show me all of them? Or do you try to put in an item here that says all countries?
This is personal preference. I maybe just for simplicity, just keep it all in the same drop down.
The same drop down. And even in that, there's several ways of doing it. Let me show you the way that I do it sometimes.
Actually, I suppose it's actually easier doing it with the checkbox saying all. Just list all, because otherwise it's going to get a little bit complicated. Yeah. But no, maybe we can show the other way another time.
Yeah. So we got the checkbox and say check show all countries. Okay. And of course, we need to change the text. Very good. I'll make that a little longer. And Barry, you need to let me know how you're doing on time. Are you okay staying up a little later tonight? I know it's
guys.
getting late there.
I've got a really early morning, so probably have to
Okay.
wrap up quite
So
soon.
we need
So
to wrap
let's
this
get through the show all part, and then we can call it a night there and continue
good.
next time.
Let's do that.
Okay.
All right. So here in the gallery, what we're going to do is this is the criteria. Now, the criteria needs to evaluate whenever it's looked at. It needs to come out to a true or false value, a Boolean. Yes, no, true, false. Okay. And I'm going to break this down into separate lines here to make it more equal. Okay. So we've got that. Does country equals what was entered in that selected out of that dropdown? Or if that checkbox dot value was checked. Okay. So let's take a look.
Just a quick question on that. Where you said "or," is that like where I actually don't know what they're called. The two sort of straight lines you can do.
Pipes.
What are they called? Pipes. Yeah,
Pipes.
2 pipes.
Yeah.
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 Could you do that as well?
That is the exact same thing. It is evaluated exactly the same. And what's sort of cool about PowerApps is it gives you the choice. And for some reason, it's control slash is usually what I do for pipes. Why isn't that working? Barry, if you open up Notepad and type,
Yeah.
I'm not able to type a pipe for some reason.
Can I put it in?
Yeah, put it in the chat.
There
I'll
you go.
I'll copy and paste it over. That is hilarious. Now on my keyboard, it's the key right above the enter key, and I hit Control to get it. So that's how I've typed pipes in the past. So I don't know why that's not coming up. All right, so very good.
Okay.
So that is exactly the same. It's the or operator.
Yeah.
And if you do
and could you same for and, I'm guessing, where you do
you could do 2 ampersands, or you could use the and keyword. Absolutely. Yeah, I love these questions, Barry, that you throw my way. Sometimes I wouldn't have even thought to even bring that up. So thank you. So we got or, that's checked. Well, I click on that and boom, it's going to show me everything. And also what I like to do, and this shouldn't take me too long here, is if I check that off, I almost want to dim this out, sort of disable, gray it out, so they don't think that it's going to be filtered by Germany. So I go into display mode and I do a little if statement here. Now, did we do any type of if statements in our previous 2 sessions? I'm not sure.
No, we haven't. So we'll have to do one just on if, because nested ifs and all that. Because I know I think every app that I've built uses multiple ifs. So really important topic.
Is I'm going to check to see if that checkbox is true. So an if statement is give me a true or false value, and that checkbox is going to give us a true or false value. There's checked or not checked. Yes, no, true, false. Yes, no. If it's true, then we're going to say, I want this display mode for the dropdown to be disabled. Otherwise, I want it to be enabled or edit. Okay, so that's all there is pretty much to an if then else. You've got, oh, my microphone's trying to jump up on me here. Sometimes it does that. So an if is essentially it's going to take 3 values. You got a value that evaluates to true or false. The second parameter is what's going to happen if it's true. The third parameter is what's going to happen if it's false. And it's as simple as that. Yeah. And I have a whole video on if statements and stuff. If you look through my videos, search for Darren Neese if then else, you'll find it. And I go into a little bit more depth, but this should work just fine. Or as we would imagine, if I uncheck that, then I've got Germany and the Netherlands. Or if I check this, it's disabled there. So what do you think of that?
That's great. That's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, don't worry if some of that confused you, because I think that if you're a beginner, I'm not sure how many of you absolute beginners, some of that might have gone like, what's going on? But go and watch it again, and then just see how it happens, and practice yourself. Get the stuff open and build exactly what Darren's built here. because the best way to do it and to understand it is to actually do it. So
absolutely. And as you guys tell us, hey, that if then else stuff, that if then else wasn't all that clear. Well, we could have a whole session on if then else and maybe a few other basic stuff. So we can always go back over this stuff. So please let us know. I have a tendency to go a little too fast. So, let me know. We could always go over this more thoroughly. Okay. So going back to the comments here, I know we need to wrap up here soon. Data's King. I use the keyword all by creating a collection and then referencing the collection to the dropdown. Absolutely. So that's another way of doing it. We didn't want to jump in and show that tonight, but we could do that in a future session if anybody's interested. But that's a good point. Data is king. And for sure, no problem. I'll be waiting anxiously for this session. Now, Barry, no, you're not going to be with us this next Wednesday, which is our normal time. What do you think about doing another session next weekend? Since you hopped out on us this next week.
I mean, let's aim for next weekend, and we'll continue, and then we can maybe do another one on the Wednesday after that. Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
if you're available, I'm happy to keep it going.
Absolutely. I think the more sessions we can put out there for people to learn these basics, the better. And as we cover the basics, we'll just start to cover a little more advanced stuff, but I'd like to do it slowly so nobody's lost. So anything else that you'd like to say or share before we sign off for the night so you can get to bed?
No, just if anyone's interested, I do host a website called PowerAppify. If you go over there, there's some applications that I've built and made available via templates. There's two actually. For some reason, you have to put in the HTTPS, the full URL. And there's some free ones that you can download, and there's one paid for one, which is a whole shopping cart, which is you can use to order any hardware or equipment that a business might need, and you can download that, install it, get it up and running. And that uses, you can, even if you just want to learn how that's done, there's lots of different components in there. Use Power Automate and all this sort of stuff. So you can download all of those, have a look at the codes, and you can customize them, get them up and running in your business. And those very easily.
That link to your website should be down in the description for all the wherever this podcast is being broadcast. You should see that link, and it should work down below. I don't think I typed it in. I'm sure I'm the one that didn't do something right here on the screen.
That's right. Anyway, you can see it. It's in the link below anyway. So do get over and have a look at those.
All right. One last reminder: we would like to hear what you guys think of not only the intro but also the outro.
This has been the PowerApps Academy podcast. Darren has over 20 years experience in information technology as a software developer. Barry has over 20 years in IT, helping solve complex issues for businesses, which include improving and automating processes, most recently with Power Platform. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've learned something. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit up Barry's YouTube at PowerApps Academy and his website at PowerAppify.com. Hit Darren up on Twitter at DeveloperMCT and on YouTube at Darren Neese. See you next time on the PowerApps Academy podcast.
Brilliant.